Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we're going to be taking a look at several transits that are perfecting over the weekend. We have Venus sextiling Pluto today. We'll take a quick look at that. Mercury is Cazimi in the sign of Aquarius, and then Mars retrograde in Cancer is trining Saturn in Pisces. So a busy weekend astrologically. We're going to spend most of our time with the Mars trine to Saturn because it's the weightiest of the transits, slowest moving, but we will visit the other ones as well. So busy weekend astrologically. We're going to take a look at it today. Before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. It really helps our channel to grow when you click the like button and subscribe. If you're not yet subscribed, it's obviously free to do so. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. When you are there, be sure to check out all of our readings and courses. And also, if you click on the live events page under events, you will see that we have monthly webinars. And on the February 20th, I'm going to be giving a talk on Venus retrogrades called Venus Through the Fire. If you want to learn more about Venus retrogrades, if you're a student of astrology or just someone who's curious to learn more about those retrograde cycles, check that webinar out. When you register, you attend the live event, or you get the recording to watch afterward, whatever you prefer. So on that note, let us now take a look at the real-time clock and let's preview the astrological transits coming over the weekend. So today, February 7th, we have a little sextile from Venus to Pluto. Let's take a look at that first. I'm just going to say a few things about this because it is very fast moving. It perfects this morning, Friday, February 7th. So that smooth, easy connection, harmonious connection between Venus and Pluto can give Venus a little bit of an edge. She already has a bit of an edge by virtue of being in a Mars-ruled sign of Aries. So this just gives us a little bit of an edgy Venus, a Venus that might bring up themes like power or conflict or assertiveness or depth and intensity. That kind of Plutonian energy combined with Venus and Aries can make for encounters that are maybe just a little bit more charged. It is a sextile between these two. So, for example, you may find that within relationships, you're able to tap into the best resources that people offer within your relationships that give you a little competitive edge here or there, or that help you to achieve your ambitions or desires. It can also be about just getting a little bit of feedback from the universe about the intensity, depth, and maybe even some of the unconscious dimensions around things like power and desire. Venus sextile to Pluto can also just be a little sexy and dark. So, watch for that because that's a combination that sometimes just you'll notice it in the movie you're watching tonight. You know what I mean? It's that kind of a thing. All right, so little contact between Venus and Pluto today, very brief. We're going to move on now to the Mercury Cazimi. Well, the next two events happen on Sunday, which is the Mercury Cazimi in the sign of Aquarius. What makes this interesting is that these two planets are squaring Uranus. They're moving into squares with Uranus. So this has the potential to be a very Uranian kind of Cazimi. Uranian Cazimi is in air sign, right? Like the thing that I think about is intellectual insight or breakthroughs when it comes to communication, being able to articulate something, comprehending something, being able to think up a new way of teaching or explaining something, new uses of technology, things that constitute a breakthrough in mental and intellectual understanding. And exciting things that are truly exciting, liberating thought forms, liberating paradigms. When you first start studying something like astrology, you could imagine a Mercury Cazimi in Aquarius square to Uranus. It's as though now heaven and earth are reflecting one another, and your old way of seeing life has been completely broken open. That's maybe a little dramatic, but because it's a fast-moving transit, of course. But a Mercury Cazimi brings Mercury to the heart of the sun and often empowers the god that is called the messenger. And so the messenger becomes empowered with solar light, illumination, clarity, insight, inventiveness, originality. These are all features of Mercury Cazimi, especially in an air sign. And then we put those in a square with Uranus, god of revolution, liberation, the god of innovation and rebelliousness. And we have something like original thinking, clarity and breakthroughs in our mind, a kind of new way of perceiving or thinking about something that constitutes a remaking of your perception. Now, this could be taking place in any area of life. You look at that whole sign house of Aquarius and Taurus to get a feel for the two house topics in your chart that might be most impacted. We will be looking at those squares to Uranus to start next week. So I will be circling back around to it, but worth mentioning that the Cazimi portion of this transit is taking place on Sunday. So watch for Mercury saying powerful things, watch for the power of thoughts, technology, ideas to be featured on Sunday. Now, the big thing I want to talk about is on Sunday, we also see Mars retrograde in Cancer, trining Saturn in Pisces. So I've got 5 themes for you to watch for given this connection. Now, I think that Mars trines or sextiles to Saturn, especially because they are slower moving, are very often very constructive. And even though we have the 2 traditional malefics getting together, when they get together constructively, it's amazing the positive significations that we can miss, because we only think of, oh, Mars and Saturn are coming together. Someone's going to stub their toe and have a bad day. It's just that, who's going to have a bad day today? The malefics are featured. So we want to move beyond that kind of thinking and really look at the nuances of each individual connection. So I've got 5 that are rooted in the wateriness of these 2 planets connecting, the trine, which is of the nature of Jupiter, which means there's a constructive a way these 2 planets are allying with one another right now that we can think about. So first one on my list is an old pattern, but a new result. Now, the reason I say this is because Mars is retrograde. Mars, any planet retrograde, can bring up things from the past. When we go backward, it is as though the symbolism of that backward movement points toward things that are backward in time. Memories, patterns from the past, history, ancestry, especially in the sign of Cancer. We've got the moon here in Cancer on Sunday as well. So things involving family history, childhood, or the ancestral past, the deep past, the archaic past. When we are going backward in time through Mars retrograde, which is one real possibility of a retrograde, right? Then we connect with Saturn in Pisces. And the potential here for Saturn representing the process of maturation and wisdom is such that we may be going back to something that has happened before, but there's a different result this time because of maturation and reflection. The retrograde often implies revision and reflection. Going back to revise and reflect, and contacting Saturn in a constructive trine can mean I have a new and more mature way of understanding something or doing something. And so watch for this accumulation of insight and wisdom, almost like a new protocol or a new thought or a new idea that can shift how you've been doing something. And you realize this is a bit of a reckoning. Saturn, like we call Saturn sometimes the Lord of Karma. All planets are karmic, but Saturn just feels a little bit more weighty and consequential. So the idea here is that there can be a constructive way of dealing with, understanding, developing wisdom or maturity around something old. Very simple. And I like to show you how I build the delineation, because the idea, if you're listening to a channel like this, is to develop your own capacity to do these kinds of delineations. So hopefully that helps. Number 2 is an emotionally mature use of action or will. Action or will is a Mars theme. Mature use is a Saturn theme. When the 2 planets get together constructively, regardless of the retrograde, one thing that can come about in water signs is that we determine the most mature, responsible, see mature, responsible Saturn words, use of our action or our willpower. It's like we say, this is the plan, this is the idea, this is the way, this is what I'll do. These are all Mars things, reflecting the deepest emotional water, maturity, Saturn. So emotionally mature uses of our willpower, or emotionally mature action plans, or ways of choosing, or that executive function of Mars, right? What will I do? What will I choose? I'm going to act in decisive ways, and I'm going to do so with a mature, sort of stoic, emotionally sensitive reflectiveness. This would be another good one. All right, number 3, when these 2 planets come together, but in a trine constructively, we have the potential for, let's think about Mars like the gas pedal and Saturn like the brake pedal. When the 2 come together, the brake and you're not supposed to press them at the same time, by the way. Right? So when they come together constructively, it is as though we have some way of working with pressure, constriction, and with the brake pedal, and action, speed, decisiveness, ambition, the gas pedal. Pressure, constriction, discipline, effort under the weight of necessity. It is as though these two planets come together, and I remember my friend, colleague Jen Zart once said, Mars Saturn is like a pressure cooker. And I can get so many good things done when these two planets come together, because action, willpower, constraint, timelines, deadlines, they come together in a harmonious way, conjunctions, trines, sextiles especially. And it is as though you have the effort, the concentration, the willpower, and the, necessity is the mother of inventiveness too, right? So necessity does a lot of things for us, but if you've ever had a deadline, you know how effective you can be when you have it. Some people can't get work done unless there's a deadline. It's crazy. It's as though the pressure shapes the, it's like the pressure makes the diamond, or however that goes. The same thing is true for Mars Saturn. The force, the pressure, the constriction, the deadline, the intensity, the weightiness of the moment can create something truly productive. And so that's another very positive signification. But if you're also just noticing it's a moment where you feel a little exhausted or tired, or the pressure is mounting, this will not last forever and is probably signified by this transit. Number 4, insight leads to difficult decisions or choices. Now, another thing that comes up with Mars and Saturn together, as I was mentioning earlier, would be like executive decisions. Someone just needs to step up, be a leader, and make a tough choice. And Mars Saturn will reflect the need, the necessity, the weightiness, the heaviness of a choice. And a choice meaning you have to choose one, not the other. There's something about Mars that is really important, is to understand that Mars is about cutting. Both Mars and Saturn have to do with things that separate. So Saturn rules oppositions, Mars rules squares. Both have to do with cutting and severing, separating, and polarizing. The malefics are associated with those qualities energetically, which is why in part we call them malefic. It's not that those qualities in reality are malefic, they're divine. But we tend to experience them as human beings who have mortal frames. We tend to experience polarization and cutting and separating as difficult, right? So when these two planets get together, there are often moments where we have to do difficult things. We are forced to make choices between things, or we have to cut and make sharp distinctions between things. The trine suggests there's some need to do so. It might be smoother than we think it's going to be because of the trine. It may be emotionally heavy or difficult to do so, but we must. And in the midst of a Mercury Cazimi on the same day squaring Uranus, we may have the insight. There may be a breakthrough in our thinking, or a kind of revolution, an overthrowing of an old paradigm or structure that leads to something new. I wouldn't be surprised, for example, this is totally mundane, but I was thinking about this, and given the Uranian signature and the going back in time, but perhaps finding a new pattern, like I wouldn't be surprised, given all of this, if the Eagles upset the dynasty. It just feels like that kind of thing in the air, where there's a different approach to something that's happening. I don't know. That's a total conjecture. That's an educated guess. Anyway, the point being, though, that the insight of the Cazimi with the squares to Uranus, that kind of light bulb going on, could lead us to also having to make some sharp distinctions or hard choices. That is in the background with the Mars-Saturn trine. Finally, with these two planets coming together, and Mars is slowing down now to station, and in the next couple of weeks will be turning direct. Woohoo! It's been a tough retrograde. These two planets getting together could point to a delay or a point of serious reflection or revision, where something that has been if there's been something in a process of revision and we've been avoiding it, this might be a point of inevitability, as though you can't avoid this any longer. Now, something very different has to be done, because even though you've known something needs to change, you've reached the point of no return. You've reached a point where something simply can't be ignored any longer. It could also point toward something slowing down, or getting a little bit stuck or weighed down or burdened or exhausted by a process or by something in the environment, something that you're feeling that suddenly feels weighty and heavy. But the other thing I like here, again, with the Cazimi in the background and the square to Uranus, is this is a turning point where there's a lot of illumination, clarity, and breakthroughs. And there's also kind of a weighty, deeper emotional energy that has to be worked with at the same time as that breakthrough is coming. So these are the transits over the next couple of days. At the beginning of next week, we will take a look at the, what am I saying? The squares to Uranus, the Mercury and Sun squares to Uranus, other things coming as well. We have these little clay figures that my girls make that they bring to me, and then they want me every night, basically before bedtime. They bring me these clay characters that they've made, and then I have to tell stories with them. So I'm going to introduce you to a teardrop that I used to explain the element of water with sometime in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to bring the teardrop on. And for parents out there, I'm going to show you how I used this little teardrop and the story of the teardrop that I used to kind of get my kids exposed to the element of water. As promised, this year, occasionally what I'm starting to do is think about ways that I can convey parenting advice for kids or for parents who want to bring some astrological insights into their kids' lives. Like, how can you bring some very basic ways of teaching kids astrology? I think this is something that, at the very least, I know that if I start paying attention to and just tapping into a little bit, that it will grow. I believe that if you water things, they grow. And I have this feeling that bringing even not really as even astrology as I think about it, but just symbolism, living in a symbolic universe, which is essentially saying living in an imaginative universe. And let me tell you, kids are way more in touch with that than oftentimes adults are. Kids have no problem understanding symbolism in many ways. So anyway, I know that if I water that a little bit this year, it'll grow and keep developing in me and in my practice in Nightlight. And I think that's something that, as my girls are starting to reach the age where they're showing active interest, that I can share a few things here or there for those of you. I mean, I'll kind of tuck it into the normal programming for anyone who's interested. And maybe I'll do some bonus episodes too. But anyway, it's been fun to share this little piece of my life with all of you guys. I know there's a lot of you who have kids. And if you don't, at least there's something here too for, you might have friends who have kids, and you could be that fun auntie who comes over with some clay figures. So we've got a poop, a piece of earwax, a little piece of barf, a teardrop, and what's the other one? Oh God, I'm forgetting. A booger? I can't remember. But anyway, my girls are really into the bathroom humor right now. So it's like everything is like gross stuff you're not supposed to talk about. Ooh, it's really funny. Which I love. My wife does not. But yeah, so like all of the clay characters they made me are like totally disgusting. I'll show you guys. I'll show you the little team of characters that I tell them stories with. All right, anyway. Hope you guys are having a good day. We'll see you again on Monday. Bye.